Welcome to our webinar on AI in Contemporary Art, Experiments and Applications. I'm Flora Zhu, a sophomore from Granite South High School in New York State. I'm a student volunteer for the Planet+AI program. I'll be your moderator for this webinar. Our speaker today is Ms. Luba Elliott. She's a curator and researcher specializing in AI art. She works to educate and engage the broader public about the recent developments in AI art through talks and exhibitions at venues across the art, business, and technology spectrum, including the Serpentine Galleries, Airbyte, ZKM, V&A Museum, Impact Festival, CogX, Neural.PS, and ICCV. Her recent projects include the Unit London exhibition, The Perfect Error, and the Art AI Festival in Leicester, UK. She founded the Neural.PS Creativity and Design Workshop and curated the online galleries AIArtOnline.com and ComputerVisionArt.com. She's an honorary senior research fellow at the UCL Center for AI. Prior to that, she worked in startups, including the AI collector database, Larry's List. She obtained her undergraduate degree in modern languages at the University of Cambridge. Ms. Luba Elliott will talk about AI in contemporary art, experiments and applications. This talk will trace the recent history of artists working with AI, from Deep Dream and Style Transfer to Gens and Dolly. It'll present a variety of artistic approaches, including developing new aesthetics, working with own drawings as data sets, and coming up with unusual concepts. Ms. Luba Elliott, I'll give it to you.
Thank you so much, Flora, for the lovely introduction, and to Ping for inviting me to be part of this webinar series. Right, so I'm going to share my screen and yeah, hopefully, wait. And yes, I think it's just loading now. So hopefully soon you will be able to see my slides. Can everybody see the slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So I'll get started. Yeah, so I think as part of the webinar series, I'll be giving two talks. So the first of which is on experiments and kind of applications in AI art. So looking at the time period from 2015 to 2023. And yeah, just to kind of start you off so you can understand better the perspective I'm coming from. So as Flora mentioned, I studied languages at Cambridge, which is, you know, quite unrelated to either AI or visual art. But I was in the right place at the right time. And sort of around 2016, when Deep Dream started becoming popular, I became interested in it. So I started kind of connecting all the different communities, so the business world, the artists and the researchers. And I ran a series of meetups in London, which were really popular and gained kind of some attention from people who were not based in London. And that led to a variety of opportunities, like exhibitions I curated for academic and kind of business conferences. So this is in a library at Cambridge University for a sort of like AI safety, kind of AI politics conference. And this is an exhibition I did for CogX, which is a business and AI conference. And then I also worked with media arts festivals like Impact, which focus a lot more on the critical applications of technology. So as you can see, lots of kind of different types of projects I've done. And yeah, I'm mostly known for the NeurIPS Creativity Workshop, which I founded and was lead organizer for 4 years from 2017 to 2020. And it's actually still running now under the leadership of Tom White and a few other researchers. So if you're happening to go if for some reason, yeah, you're going to NeurIPS, which is, yeah, this kind of really big academic AI conference, then yeah, please do have a look. And yeah, this is the online gallery associated with it. And yeah, apart from that, an image from the Leicester Art and AI Festival, where I try to display a lot of this AI artwork out in public settings. And yeah, of course, I've also done some work with NFTs on the Feral File platform. And I think, yeah, that's sort of it in terms of my background. So hopefully now you have a kind of better understanding of kind of where I'm coming from. And yeah, I like to start off these talks with Deep Dream because this marked my entry point into the field. And it was also similar for a lot of other artists with whom I've worked. So everybody got yeah, kind of really excited by this technology because it was one of the first instances of when AI art was gaining interest from the mainstream. And yes, it was developed at Google in 2015 by Alex Matvintsov and others. And yeah, if you're not familiar with it, the way it works is you have an image and then you have this kind of algorithm that looks at it and then it gets kind of really excited by certain features and you get these like crazy shapes and colors coming out of a normal image. And to me, this was an example of an algorithm being creative because, you know, like you had this normal image and then you got this like crazy colors and animals out of it. And yeah, it's still one of my favorites, I think, algorithms in a way, but I think very few artists use it. One of these is Daniel Ambrosi, and he uses kind of Deep Dream together with various like realistic subject matter that he's interested in, sort of normally landscapes and such scenes. And you can see how he sort of combines the swirls and the bright colors of Deep Dream together with kind of more realistic subject matter. And yeah, I think this is a kind of a great use case of kind of applying Deep Dream to almost enhance your vision for a particular scene as opposed to letting it just take everything away. And over the years, he's also experimented with kind of exploring piling and cubism to kind of yeah, bring his aesthetic further into abstraction. And then came something called style transfer by the Gattes Lab in Germany. And yeah, so you had this like image and you could turn it into the style of Monet or Van Gogh or one of these other artists. And I remember when I was going to a lot of these AI conferences like NeurIPS, kind of back in 2020, like 16, 17 and so on, this is what AI art was to a lot of the researchers. So for them, they thought that yeah, to make art, you needed to kind of find a way to make the images look like an old artwork from a gallery. Whereas if you speak to a lot of artists working nowadays, they want to make their own aesthetic. They want to do something completely different as opposed to replicating something that has been done before. So this was quite interesting to me because it showed that there was a lot of difference between the ways how different communities perceived AI art and what the aims were. So yeah, that was quite cool. And yeah, Gene Kogan was, I think, yeah, one of the artists and educators who was really kind of key at that period of time. And he sort of expanded style transfer to mean other things like, you know, like Google Maps or calligraphy or this kind of like starry sky. And I think, yeah, that's kind of one of the more interesting, let's say, ways of thinking of style. And moving on, next main technology was GANs. And yeah, so initially developed by Ian Goodfellow in 2014. Of course, they've kind of gone through various stages as the quality kind of improved and got extremely realistic in 2018 or so. And I think this is the technology that kind of became the most prominent until DALL-E and Stable Diffusion arrived. So the kind of the generation of artists that I've worked with, they have mostly worked with bands. And one of these is Mario Klingemann. And he's been looking at the human form. And in some of his earlier works from 2017, you can kind of see that, you know, for example, in the image on the left, like the mouth is a bit lopsided. There's kind of only one eye, and the hair is like at an odd angle. So this is not kind of the result you hope for if you're trying to get a realistic image. And this sort of also highlights the state of the gowns at the time, because they were making a lot of mistakes and undergoing so-called problems. Like, you know, if they were generating animals, there'd be too many legs. And all these things to researchers, there were problems, but to artists, they were something interesting, something that kind of showed that the algorithm was being creative or making something unexpected. And yeah, so similarly here in these works by Mario Klingemann, you can see also that the human form is kind of portrayed sometimes in an unusual fashion. But these works, they, when art curators or historians viewed them, they made a link to Francis Bacon, who is an artist from the 20th century. And he also, I guess, painted his subject matters with kind of unusual faces and some amount of abstraction. But if you speak to Mario Klingemann, then he would tell you that this was not the inspiration for his work. So it's sort of interesting how maybe some of these neural networks, they sort of pick up and make styles that are similar to other artists without kind of that being the main intent. And yeah, as the gowns were getting more realistic, yeah, artists needed to think more about like what to do to make their work different. And Scott Eaton, who is a London-based artist working also with the human form, he kind of made these sketches where you can see that the texture of the skin is very high resolution and realistic, but the shapes are a bit unusual, which to me is reminiscent of the earlier gowns. So it's sort of like combined the two different approaches. And yeah, and there's a group of artists who work with their own data sets. And one of these is Roman Lipsky. So in this project, he took a picture of a night scene in LA, and then he proceeded to paint 9 different variations of it. So you can see this is sort of his normal style. So he only uses 1 or 2 colors in an image. It's somewhat realistic in terms of composition. And yeah, so he was also looking to engage with technology to maybe try and get out of a creative block and to find new ideas of how to create work. And so he worked with a team of technologists to work with an AI system that would be trained on his 9 drawings, and then it would generate images sort of in the style of yeah, his work. But because the data set was very small, right, 9 images, and the algorithms, this was like 2016 or so, and the algorithms were not as advanced, like this is the type of results that Roman Lipsky received. So you can see that there are kind of many more colors in an image, and yeah, it's different to what you'd expect from Roman. And then he proceeded to kind of paint some drawings in response to what he received from the machine. And he got these images. And you can see that the color palette has expanded to include kind of more colors and is becoming a little bit less realistic. And then again, these images, they went into the AI system, which kind of was trained on them and generated new images, which were these. And you can see they're kind of very abstract. The colors used are completely different. And again, Roman Lipsky painted some, yeah, made a painting in response to that. And if you compare the two, you can see that there's been quite a stylistic development, right? So in the images on the left, you have kind of the two colors, they're quite realistic. And the image on the right is kind of quite abstract. So I think this was an interesting case of using an AI system, firstly on your own data sets, and then also to kind of try and maybe change your style. And also to work in a physical realm, because ultimately Roman has been making kind of physical paintings, and that's what he wanted to continue doing. And it's just like AI was able to kind of help him come up with a new style of working, but you know, he could still stay being a painter if that's what he was interested in. Other artists working with data sets include Helena Sarin, who is based in the US, and she has a very kind of distinct aesthetic because she combines various mediums. Like in the image on the right, I think she combines photography, pastel drawings, and newspaper to kind of, and she processes those all kind of together with GANs to kind of generate images that look like quite craft based. So they're kind of very, very different from the typical, I think, GAN aesthetic. And yeah, I think that makes her work really interesting. And then Anna Ridler. So this is a project I commissioned for the Impact Festival. And Anna Ridler came to the Netherlands. She bought a lot of tulips. She took 10,000 photographs and then proceeded to label and categorize them. And then she trained again on them to kind of generate images. And yeah, so that's what she did. And I think what made her work special was the fact that whenever she wanted to kind of display her work, she would ensure that the images which were generated, so normally it's shown as a kind of an installation of several tulips that kind of move, that these works were displayed together with a data set. So there'd be a wall covered with hundreds or maybe like 1,000 of these like photographs. And this sort of underscores how important the artist's labor and that of kind of making the data set and, you know, categorizing it, how all of that is very important and not just kind of the technology and the algorithm. There's a lot of kind of human labor involved in all of this. And yeah, she also proceeded to make a work called Bloemenveiling, which kind of preceded the NFT boom. And she built like this platform where she was selling NFTs of tulips that would only bloom or exist for a week, and then they would kind of self-destruct because, you know, flowers don't bloom forever. So maybe digital flowers shouldn't do this either. So I think it's quite an interesting conceptual work done with NFTs before everybody else was working with NFTs. And yeah, this is a newer work from Mario Klingemann that was part of one of my exhibitions this year at Unit London. And here you have side by side a work from 2018 on the left and a work from 2021 on the right. And you can kind of see how much the image generation capabilities have kind of evolved in that space of time. So the image from 2018, it was titled Neural Glitch. And I know Mario Klingemann kind of manipulated some of the weights in the algorithm to kind of have a particular image, and he kind of wasn't able to replicate the exact result using Stable Diffusion this year because, you know, maybe it hadn't been trained on these early examples of AI art. And yeah, so there's also a group of artists who look maybe about kind of using different models or coming up with their own algorithms to kind of distinguish themselves amongst all the other artists working in the space. And Ivona Tao is one of these. So in this work, I think it's titled Memory Discontinued. She trained, she got the neural network to kind of go back and undergo the process of forgetting. So rather than kind of learning and improving as it goes along, the images are getting worse in quality and color. And again, I think that's quite an interesting approach that Ivona's one of the artists who uses. And yeah, Terry Broad has been working with a GAN, so with two neural networks that have been trained without any data. And so they're trying to, I guess sort of like mimic each other. And through that, you kind of get some colors. But I think, again, it's an interesting approach of using one of these algorithms that typically are used on very large data sets on kind of something that has no data and seeing what the aesthetic results are of that. And Entangled Others, they looked at sort of combining the results of, I think it was like a top layer of the first neural network and like the bottom layer of the second neural network to kind of mix and match different species and make these aesthetics that, again, look very much, I think, like they have some relation to craft or to physical art. But yeah, the artists did experiment a bit with the more kind of technical and usual sides of the process. And Debbie Parrick, so she's been combining non-generative AI approaches and kind of various AI and image recognition tools to kind of work with her own data and create these images of flowers. And so now I'll show you a group of artists who think a lot about how they kind of present their work, and through that they distinguish themselves. And one of these is Jake Elves, who is an artist based in London. And yeah, in their work, the artist has generated images of these kind of birds using a GAN, and then they have placed the screen in the Essex marshes, which is kind of this local area in the UK. And there you could kind of see all the birds kind of walking past. And it was an interesting case of of having these mechanical and artificial birds interact with the natural environment. And then I will also mention the portrait of Edmund Bellamy by the Obvious Collective. And in 2018, this I think this got a lot of kind of attention, because this work, even though like I would personally think that aesthetically it's inferior to the main state of the art of the time, so the works done by Mario Klingemann or Memo Acton, this work was put on sale at Christie's in New York, and it was sold for $400,000, which is, at that time, it was like a record for AI art. And I think what made this work particularly successful was the fact that it was printed and put in a golden frame, and also signed with, formula, I think, from the GAN algorithm. So this was done, I think, by a bunch of business and marketing students from Paris. And I guess they knew how to promote their work. So they did well financially out of it. And of course, you probably know Refik Anadol. He's probably one of the most famous AI artists now. And he's been able to make kind of very beautiful work with these kind of colors that keep moving, and that some critics call like a lava lamp. And kind of all these colors and moves are based in are based from a data set of artwork from, in this case, the Museum of Modern Art. And yes, that piece of work was displayed at the museum for a year or so. And yeah, I think Refik showed how kind of if you make work that's immersive, that and aesthetically beautiful, that can bring and engage a lot of audience into the space. And yeah, as you come from planetary sciences, I wanted to include this work by Cecilie Wagner Falkenström. So she is a Danish artist and yeah, works with AI. And last year, there was a work that she did that went to, I think, the NASA space station, and there was an AI algorithm that was, I think, looking at some of the planetary data and generating images based on that. And then I think those images would then be sold as NFTs and could be exchanged for like actual bits of asteroid or something like that. So I remember it was quite an interesting kind of concept that, yeah, relates to your subject matter. So yeah, if you want to learn more, you could look at her website. I think it's called Celerium or something like that. And yeah, other artists, again, think about the conceptual and art historical possibilities of these technology. And Mine Ateru has African heritage from, and she was interested in the Benin Kingdom, and she proceeded to kind of use AI to kind of, yeah, to train GANs on a data set of, I think it was a mixture of faces and other types of kind of sculptural objects. And kind of through that, she wanted to fill in the art historical gaps, because I think a lot of these kind of objects were lost. And yeah, this is, again, an AI imagining what some of them would have looked like. And again, I think it's a great use case of trying to kind of find the missing links in art history. And yeah, Ben Snell has, I think, quite a conceptually fascinating work, because he trained GAN on a data set of sculpture from, you know, antiquity to modernity. And then he proceeded to kind of destroy the computer that generated the image. And out of this dust, he made the sculpture. So I think this is, yeah, quite an unusual work, because I think very few artists think so kind of deeply about the conceptual side of the work to an extent. And yeah, so this way, Ben also makes links to artists from the early 20th century who were also kind of destroying their work. And yeah. There's also a subset of artists who work with robotics, and yeah, Segwen Chong is one of these. So she's a Chinese-Canadian artist now based in London, and she works with a robot called Doug. I think it's Drawing Operations Unit Generation 1 or 2. There's like, she has a few different robots. And in her work, she proceeds to, yeah, so she's trained these robots on her drawings, and she frequently does performances where she draws together with the robot. So you can kind of see here how that works. This is kind of another one of her performances where she's also kind of relying on her brain data to kind of influence the drawings. And this is what some of the finished works look like. So this is from kind of this year. So they're made into kind of fine art paintings that fit in very seamlessly into the kind of contemporary art world, and yet still have this kind of interesting kind of process linked to AI. And now I wanted to include some artists who work with slightly different algorithms, so move away from generative models and yeah, look at those artists who maybe work with facial or object recognition. And yeah, so one of these works is by Matej Mariansky, who pitted a curve generator against I think a facial recognition algorithm, or no, against an evolutionary algorithm to kind of help develop curves that looked like faces. And when I was curating these AI art online workshops, I remember that in our last year, this was kind of the most popular artwork because I think it had such a very different take on the human face. And this work by Chung-Sung Baek, Kim Young-hong, so two artists based in South Korea, who worked with a team of painters tasked with making a portrait together with a facial recognition system. And as they were making the portrait, so drawing a painting, as soon as the work or the system kind of could recognize a face, then the artist had to do something to stop it being recognized as a face. So you have these kind of portraits, and some of these probably to you as a human do look like a portrait. But I think, for example, in the image on the left, it took me a while to kind of figure out like where is the face. But turns out if you turn your like face 90 degrees, then you can see that there is a face that's just been kind of replicated multiple times. And yeah, so this artwork to me is quite interesting because it applies an algorithm such as facial recognition in a fine art context. And most AI artists work with generative models like GANs to kind of, generate images, and that's the work. But these artists, they worked with kind of a different algorithm, and they applied it in a fine art context as opposed to applying it kind of to make critical work around the applications of facial recognition or so on. So I think this is, yeah, quite interesting. And yeah, moving on, Tom White is an artist who works with object recognition, and he's been making these sort of ink prints that are recognizable as a particular category by image recognition, by most image recognition models. So the image on the left is a teddy bear, and the image on the right is a snail. And certainly, I think as a human, like if I look at the image on the left, that does look like a teddy bear to me. But I think if I wanted to create an image that would be recognizable to most kind of humans as a snail, then maybe I would kind of do something slightly different. And yeah, so I think Tom White's work really kind of highlights the differences in human and machine perception. And do you think it should be? No, it's not a video. But yeah, so this work by Kirill Benzi sort of looks at generating images of flowers, but based on kind of slightly different categories in the data set. So you can see there was like guinea pig, traffic light, cabbage butterfly, and so on, that are kind of all kind of make up a certain percentage of the data set, and then kind of yeah, all combined they lead to yeah, these flowers. And now yeah, I wanted to kind of yeah, probably go back to modernity, to kind of the times when DALL-E, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion are the main techniques used to kind of make art by artists and others. And yeah, there's again a variety of different kind of approaches to work with these tools. Some artists like Vadim Epstein try and build their own models to kind of make their own aesthetic. So shortly after Clip and DALL-E were released, I think in 2021, Vadim Epstein made a tool called Aphantasia that sort of like visualized your yeah, it helped you to kind of visualize images when you couldn't see. I mean, that was the conceptual, I think, description of the model. And yeah, as you can see, it had this kind of certain aesthetic that I think, yeah, worked well because, again, like it helped Vadim have get his own personal style. And other artists working, I think Manekineka worked with Rudali, and you can see that this artist kind of made some work that, again, is very different from the typical kind of stable diffusion or mid-journey art you might find. And this artist probably used a lot of post-processing with like Photoshop or other tools to like make a collage of the different kind of generated images, and through this make this kind of very beautiful and intricate work. And Claire Silver is an artist that's I think quite prominent now on social media, and she made this kind of Birth of Venus reimagined, where she's included kind of lots of different styles like Impressionism, Cubism, and so on to kind of create a more contemporary vision of what Venus might look like. Because of course, art historically, there is kind of this work by Sandro Botticelli from hundreds of years ago. And this is kind of a more modern recreation based on our kind of sensibilities and visions. And yeah, Sophia Crespo has been using these tools to highlight the plight of certain animals close to extinction, such as these frogs and this type of mouse. And yeah, Botto is a project by Mario Klingemann. And what is interesting about Botto is that the artist has been making use of the typical kind of structure of various NFT groups called a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. And in this case, it meant that Mario had a community of thousands of kind of people who would, every time this kind of algorithm generated images that were kind of approved by Mario, the community would then kind of vote which one of these images should go on sale on Super Rare. And this project did very well. And I remember at the height of the AI, at the height of the NFT boom in 2021, like the first 4 images, I think they were sold for like 1 million euros or so. And yeah, other artists, again, try and bring some of these kind of latest tools into the physical realm. And so Varvara and Mar, 2 artists based in Estonia, have kind of, yeah, have used stable diffusion and so on to come up with designs, which they then have kind of 3D printed using ceramics and glazed manually. So you can see it becomes kind of this physical work that again still has some kind of artistic and technological link. And I think some of the more interesting developments recently in terms of AI and art, or maybe generative art, are also the possibilities and the interaction with audiences. And there are platforms such as art blogs or mprops that sort of enable artists to create a series of perhaps of hundreds kind of generative artworks that are all slightly different. And yeah, in this case, Danielle King made a series called The Muses, in which there were 500 different kind of images that were kind of generated by the artist. And the way these kind of long form generative art pieces work is that I think as a buyer, you can buy like a certain seed, and then once you've bought it, you get to see the image. And this is also the first time the artist sees the image. So it's quite a special and an interesting approach, because of course, traditionally, artists spend a lot of time kind of working on different images, and then they would curate very heavily what is kind of shown at a particular show or what is presented to collectors. And this kind of long form generative art movement kind of turns that on its head. And yeah, still, I think given all the developments in terms of AI kind of text to image, like Stable Diffusion art, I still really like this work from 2017 called A Closed Loop. And it's by an artist called Jake Elves, who I mentioned earlier. And what is interesting about his approach is that he works with two kind of neural networks. So one on the left generates images based on the text on the right. And yeah, the neural network on the right generates text based on the images on the left. So yeah, it's like they're in kind of conversation, as the artist puts it. So one neural network is talking in images and the other one in text. And yeah, to me, this kind of is quite interesting, kind of conceptually. And I've displayed this work also several times. We have these like two screens facing each other, and as if they're kind of trying to communicate. And this also shows how far the technology has sort of advanced over the years, because this is like 2017, and of course now you can generate kind of much better images. And I think I'm still have maybe a couple of minutes left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just, I guess, mention like one or two projects that use, again, slightly kind of different algorithms that are perhaps, certainly in my circles, they were less fashionable. So Harm van den Dorpel works with genetic algorithms, and he's been making these turtle drawings where there are yeah, sorry, I don't know why there's sound there, but basically like he has this website called hybrid.bio, and there are these kind of various turtle drawings, and if you click on two of them, then they act as parents, and they kind of generate lots of different variations of possible children drawings, and you pick kind of two parents out of that, and the process continues until kind of everything converges, and kind of you get like the designs look very similar, and then you get kind of the supreme artwork that is then printed and made into fine art piece. And yeah, he has also made some work with Markov chains that kind of look at different possibilities of how squares can kind of split and divide themselves. And yeah, if anybody, I was going to say, I guess none of you are based in Europe, but yeah, this is on show in Amsterdam at the moment. And I think, yeah, I will wrap up here. And yeah, so I'm running a call for the CVPR, so the Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference on AI art. And yeah, we welcome submissions for art made with or about computer vision. You can find more details via this link. And yeah, I think I've made the submission process quite simple in that I ask a link to the image or the video or other documentation of the work, and then kind of a short description as to like how exactly your piece uses computer vision and any kind of art historical references. So if you have any work, or like you can maybe have some time over the holidays, then you can kind of submit, and then the pieces will be displayed probably on screens, and also in an online gallery kind of during the CVPR conference. And yeah, also if you have any questions, you can email me or kind of find my website. And I think that's it.
Ms. Luba Elliott, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. We really enjoyed it. And of course, we have some questions in the chat, so let's move on to the Q&A part. So As we all know, generative AI is getting very powerful. So my question is, will AI eventually take over artists' jobs?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think you're kind of raising a lot of concerns. So the way I see it, there are different types of artists, right? So there are artists who maybe kind of draw images for like games or as illustrations for books or kind of design logos. And I think a lot of this work can be kind of automated with a lot of these like text to image generators because they can make like very good art. So I think anybody in those professions need to probably rethink how they kind of make their work and maybe learn how to work with these tools and pick up some other skills perhaps. But I think some of the artists, like I've kind of shown in this presentation, they make art that's sort of more for galleries or for museums, and there a lot of the art or the value is also kind of in the brand or the narrative around it. And I think there will always be a space for art like that because it requires a lot of I think creativity and kind of maybe looking at the limitations of these systems or coming up with unusual use cases and often combining various kind of mediums or making like physical work. That is, I think, kind of much trickier for a lot of these AI systems to do at present still.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. So, if we want to experiment AI arts as what the artists are doing, what are the most recommended AI tools?
Um, yeah, so I think the tools are always kind of updated. So I think you could always start off playing with, Mid-Journey or like Stable Diffusion. I think Runway is a really kind of good platform that kind of enables you to try lots of different kind of AI tools in a system that's a bit like Photoshop, and it doesn't require you to kind of code as much. So yeah, that's good. Otherwise, I think I would always encourage you to just also like if you come from a particular, I think, research kind of background, or you work with particular kind of algorithms in your kind of normal day-to-day life, you can also, maybe because you know them well, you can try and think, okay, what can I do with them that would kind of make unusual results? Because a lot of the AI artists kind of I've been working with, they're not always kind of excited about the algorithms that are designed to like mimic a human painting, like I don't know, a cat or something again that replicates somebody else's style. They also sometimes want to work with algorithms that have been maybe designed to kind of make new proteins or things like that. So yeah, again, I would look at general kind of AI algorithms that are popular for generating images. I would look at the different facial recognition models. I would look at tools like Runway, and there are maybe like a few others that are new now. And yeah, I'd do that.
Thank you. I'll definitely check them out. Um, so we have another one. Does generative AI possess inherent creativity when producing art, or does it rely entirely on algorithms crafted by humans?
So I think the way a lot of these generative AI tools work is that they kind of look at this kind of huge data set that they've been trained on, and they can recognize the patterns, and they do their best to kind of yeah, to churn out data that's kind of in the style of the particular data set. And yeah, I mean, I think kind of earlier on when it seemed that the results were kind of not as great, it certainly felt that the algorithms were being more creative because, you wanted the perfect vision of a human face or of a tulip, and what you got wasn't perfect. So it did feel that there was kind of more scope for creativity because there were more errors done by the technology. But now, I think because a lot of what is generated is of very high quality and there are fewer mistakes. I mean, yes, still there are issues maybe with kind of generating fingers and so on. It feels maybe that, I mean, to many artists, that these tools are not as kind of creative. And the artist always needs to work harder and to be more creative, right? To come up with a prompt that would kind of generate something that's kind of more unique to what everybody else is doing.
Thank you. Our last question, how people normally evaluate the AI artworks? Say anywhere people to share and rate the artworks?
So how do people rate them? I mean, I think it sort of depends on the individual, right? Because as I talked to you about my background, because it's quite different to a lot of the other curators I know. And but I think in general, the way kind of curators and other people look at evaluating artwork is they look at the concept. So what is the artist trying to do? Are they trying to kind of depict a tree in a new way? Are they trying to kind of make a comment on a certain problem in society? And then they look at kind of the execution. So how well has the artist done it? Like, is the aesthetic new? Does it say something interesting? And I think in terms of AI, particularly in terms of the galleries I do with like computer vision, I would also maybe look at the tools you're using. So maybe you've come up with a new algorithm or you're kind of using a new model. And I mean, that would be quite interesting for my audience, right? Because CVPR will have a lot of researchers. But like in some other contexts, that might be less interesting because if I show this in a gallery in the center of London, maybe the audiences wouldn't kind of be able to appreciate that this is a new algorithm because for them it might be more important to know to kind of analyze the aesthetics and just look at what the artist is trying to say. So yeah, there are some differences.
Thank you. So thank you again for your presentation and answer our questions. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope to see you again on our next webinar.
Thank you, Flora.
Thank you.
Thank you.